Welcome back to the VideoCraft stand at SEMPTE 2017. In our next series, next interview in our Broadcast Brain series, I'd like to introduce Anthony Cable, a Senior Product Manager from Sony Australia. Anthony, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Great. Well, certainly Sony have had a lot of success in recent times with some really large projects, and certainly a lot of this is all based around IP. What I'd like to talk about a little bit more is where Sony are going with IP, and especially in the light of new standards with ST2110, and how's this going to help us moving forward? So initially with our cameras and switches and servers, what's Sony got to offer that's really helping move the technology forward?
Sure. So Sony's got a full range of IP products, and we've been producing live production products for quite a few years in the IP space. Before the standards were evolved, Sony had worked on a system known as NMI, the Network Media Interface, and that has a lot of similarities to the 2110 standards that are now evolving and starting to roll out into the industry. The general move for IP, I think, benefits the industry in a whole range of different ways. If you've got a small OB van, for example, basic things like the amount of cabling that you need to change. You know, what used to be a bundle of SDI cables this big is now a single piece of single mode fiber, weighing a hundredth of what it used to be. So that makes it a lot easier to integrate in. It makes the cabling of a truck and setup of those things much faster and easier to work with. It also allows you to do things remotely across a network. So you'll be able to have cameras at a remote location, be able to control those from a central location, push the video across long distances. It really is quite flexible the way that you can staff and manage operations as well. So there's quite a range of different changes to the operations that people are going to have in the industry. Yep. So some exciting changes.
So certainly one of the key products that Sony's had really good success with in recent times is the Sony HDC 4300 4K OB camera.
Yep.
And one of the things that's been built with the new HDCU 4300 CCU with IP capability. Now, one thing that I'm really interested in understanding more with IP is we've talked about IP and getting in effect an SDI signal out through an IP link, but how do we go with these standards in removing having to manually wire tallies and all the comms going through analog? Where are we at with, say, the 4300s and that whole level of integration?
Sure. So, as you sort of hinted to, as the standards evolved, the initial part of the standard that was rolled out was literally a straight replacement for SDI. In addition to that, though, there is a whole range of other third-party signaling, control, tally, a range of metadata that's being integrated into the 2110 standard and associated standards there. The idea is the interoperability between manufacturers is going to be able to be integrated with a range of manufacturers. So you may have a switcher from Sony and cameras from Sony, but your graphic system may come from a third party. So being able to integrate those together and have a control protocol that works between the different devices, something that can alert, tally, routing audio, all these sort of things are standalone systems, but need to integrate and work together as one across a single unified IP network. That's the standards that's rolling out now. Something that I think as an industry we'd hoped would have been ready at NAB time. It looks like it'll be finalised around IBC time and then rolled out there. So it's good. It's rapidly evolving. It's something we've seen the industry, while from the outside it may look like it's taken a while, if you compare it to the rollout of other standards through large standard organisations, it's actually happening really quickly. Which is good to see, and it's a common unifying factor against all manufacturers. We're seeing a move towards these standard groups. Everyone understands that most customers work with products from a whole range of vendors, so having a system just from one vendor isn't practical for most people. So moving forward, basing it all around these SMPTE standards makes perfect sense.
So do you think, from Sony's point of view, I know that initially with NMI there was compression options and things as well. Do you think we'll see compressed SDI, I should say not SDI, it's uncompressed, but moving the video over compression using some of the Sony technology moving forward, or is the main emphasis on uncompressed video over SDI?
Okay, so the standard for 2110, the initial rollout is uncompressed. There is no compressed video options available in that, and there is also only HD as part of the initial standard. That will then roll out to Ultra HD, or 4K as people often call it. Then that will also initially be uncompressed. As we progress down the track further, I am sure that there will be other options available for a low level of compression, just because it makes it easier to move things around. But as an industry, initially it was decided to just deal with uncompressed because there was a lot of less coordination that needed to happen between the different manufacturers and the range of different people throughout the industry. So initially uncompressed. Down in the track in the future, I think compressed will become part of the standard, but uncompressed is the first rollout there.
Sure.
Yeah. You see networks increasing more and more in bandwidth size, so it's not crazy to talk about a 100 gig connection anymore. So uncompressed, while it is quite large, isn't as difficult to deal with than if you were trying to deal with uncompressed 5 years ago, for example.
Well, certainly if we think about a 1080-50i signal being 1.5 gigabits per second, that's certainly quite easy to deal with.
Yeah, that's easy. When you start dealing in larger setups with many cameras, then it changes the factor a bit, but it's still quite easy to push around.
Yeah. I know what I'm holding out for personally is when I can plug a network cable into our OB cameras and the audio and the tallies and everything are all there. And yeah, we can work around it now by using other control systems such as VSM and actually put a control layer over the top that makes it all work just the same.
Yeah.
But when I can retire the soldering iron to get red lights on cameras, that for me is the future.
Yeah, no, it's very close. As I said, around IBC time, I think you're going to see that from many different manufacturers, Sony being one of them, across our whole range. We already have it available on the HTC 4300s, the XVS switches also are fully IP capable, and our PWS 4500 replay server also supports IP. So it's things that we're rolling out. It's definitely evolving quite quickly.
Cool. Another new camera that you've got in the range is the HTC 4800, the 4K super slow or HD really super slow camera, if you like. And one of the game-changing elements there is inbuilt server in the camera processor. So tell us a bit more about the camera and how that works in the live environment.
Sure. So the HTC 4800 is, from all respects, looks like a standard system camera and integrates into people's workflow in exactly the same way. So the same control surface, RCP, paint controls, exactly the same as what you would see on a standard system camera. Excuse me. So if you're dealing with a super slow-mo camera, for an operator, sorry,
that's right.
For an operator, works exactly the same way. So you don't have a separated, dedicated paint control for that. So for people doing camera control, just works in exactly the same way. For people doing the replay and the camera control and the clip creation, works in the same way as you would on a traditional replay server. So you can actually separate those two, where you don't have to have a dedicated replay operator per high-speed camera. You can have a centralized person where they're able to control multiple cameras, create clips from them, and transfer those. As you mentioned, the recording actually happens in the base station of the camera, not in the camera head. So the camera head itself doesn't have a dedicated memory and then dumps back. It is always over the SMPTE fiber, pouring that high frame rate data all the way back. It allows you to record up to hours of high-speed footage in the base station itself, and then create those clips. Those clips can be transferred directly across a network to another playback server, or transferred around or moved off to an editing system, for example.
Sure. One thing that we've also had some work with lately with Sony is Sony's new XVS series switches and the XVS 6000 series switches that we're currently installing in some large projects right now. While in this project we've gone down the SDI path, we are using them in an Ultra HD mode. You mentioned with the IP cards that are coming out, or that are available now, I should say. It really enables to do a hybrid of, I suppose, IP and SDI. And is that really what you're seeing from your initial sales of these switches?
Yeah, there's a bit of a mix. We have some units that are purely IP, so they're not using any SDI at all into the switcher. Others, they're mixing some SDI and then the majority of IP. So, you know, it's available on the switcher just as an input card, so you can mix and match however you like. From the operator's point of view, there is no difference. They don't care whether crosspoint 1 is for an SDI or an IP source. It's just a camera they're selecting. So it makes no difference there.
Oh, absolutely. The switches themselves, one of the things I've liked about the new XVS is that it's very familiar to our operators compared to what we're using with the MVS series switches that we've come to grow and love over many years. And other than the fact that they have a much sexier black control surface and nice OLED panels.
It's a pretty looking panel.
It's still very operationally familiar to operators.
Yes.
And the idea of being able to upgrade to IP in the future, or have a mixture of SDI and IP, is really an attractive feature set. And certainly another feature that I've liked with the XVS switches is the format converters, the ability to up-convert from HD to Ultra HD in the switcher, and we found that actually to be a massive cost saver as well.
Yeah.
With the XVS series switches, do we have much in the way of extra developments, more things coming through, or any new things?
Yeah, so there's a continuing upgrade in the software on those. In fact, for the format conversion, there's a range of new different formats that it will support for up and down cross conversion as well. You're seeing a whole range of integration with some third-party control things as well. And then just a whole range of small additional features that make a big difference to operators, easier to change the way macros work or assignment of other things. So, yeah, there's a whole range of different additions. As always, you know, we take switcher operator feedback seriously on that. They're the people who use these things every day, and they always come up with good suggestions on what changes need to be made. So, yeah, listen to those and implement them. Yeah.
Cool. One thing that we haven't talked about there is Sony's PWS 4500 server.
Yep.
And with the whole idea of moving to IP, now this is also an IP-capable server that can tie into your 4800 camera.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit more about what it can do and what sort of features that it has that the market be familiar with.
Sure. So the unit can be either 4K or HD, or work in both at the same time. So in an HD only configuration, it's up to 8 channels. That can be 4 in, 4 out, 6 in, 2 out, 2, 6, flip it around. Or you can in fact have it just as a recording server, so you can have 8 channels just going in to record there. If you use it in just 4K or UHD, then it's 4 channels. Again, you can configure how you like. Or you can mix and match. So you could have one set of UHD coming in and then other channels dedicated to HD. In addition to all your traditional, you know, setting up clips and playlists and recording back there, it has the ability to take a HD cutout from a UHD source, where you can move a window around within the frame. You can create keyframes and position that for the replay, which is handy to give you more of a zoom or punch in, which, say, on a sporting event, you could be using for judicial review, being able to get in a bit closer to the action without having to lose that quality that you expect.
Okay.
The unit also does high frame rate and will record and allow support up to the 16 times that the 4800 does. So quite flexible as far as that. And again, you can mix and match. You can have one channel running at high frame rate for a high-speed camera, and then the others running at regular single speed.
Great. Well, it sounds really good, and I think Sony have certainly got a very strong package when it comes to an IP future. So we really appreciate your time coming in, Anthony, and discussing what's coming on. And certainly moving forward, if you're coming into SEMPTE, Sony have on display the 4800 and the replay service system. So please feel free to come in and catch us all out in the stands. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you.